So, how many people here have watched The Bear on TV? Raise your hand. Oh, not as many as I thought. Well, for those of you who don't know it, it's just one of my favorite all time TV shows. And it's one of those things you have to stream on Hulu or Disney Plus or something. And when it came out, season 1 and 2, it won all the awards. It's got an amazing, amazing cast. It's got stellar writing. It's just fantastic. And it's about family. It's about family dysfunction. It's about relationships. And it's really, for me, what I love about it is you see these characters go through amazing, messy, personal growth. Now, it's also about a restaurant. It takes place in a restaurant, and it's about all the many people that work in this restaurant. And when season 1 and 2 came out, we all learned a new language from this show. Because I didn't realize that every single person that works in a restaurant, whether they're a chef or not, they call them chef. So it's all yes chef, no chef, behind chef. And so people out in the real world were saying that all the time. You go to Starbucks, people say behind chef. I do that to my husband to this day. If I walk behind him, behind chef. So they introduced this language. Well, now we're in season 4. In season 4, the first couple of episodes, they introduced me to a new kind of language that happens in kitchens. And it's one word: heard. And so someone would come into the kitchen on the show and bark an order, and the person that needed to action it would say, heard. And one of the chefs, probably the sous chef, was giving the head chef some advice on how when he changes something at the last minute, it really affects them in the kitchen. And he just gave her that one word response: heard. And you really knew that he had understood it. So I became kind of curious about it, and I Googled it. What is this thing with heard, the one word? And Google confirmed, yeah, in restaurant kitchens, it's what they do, because they are working under a time crunch. And so someone comes and barks an order, and they need to know that they've been heard. So the person just says that one word. Google also told me that young people today, they don't use a lot of words. Now, I'm an old person, so I use a lot of words. I was waiting for my husband to say amen, but he didn't. Um, so these young people will text back to their friends or just say to their friends, heard, and that means something is understood. So I started thinking about that, and I think that we are not real good at hearing people. Let me reword that. Let me use an I statement. I am not real good at listening to people and making people feel heard. Now, when God gives me a topic, I know it's for me. And when I was kind of formulating this, is this my talk or not, I had two kind of interesting things happen. So a couple started texting me, and they are kind of new friends. And they were texting me something important, and I was texting them back. And I finally just knew that I needed to call them. I needed to pick up the phone and call them. And y'all know I don't ever call anybody. I'm the queen of texting, right? So I called them, and I had a 45-minute phone call with them. And at the end of it, they thanked me for picking up the phone because they felt heard. And a few days later, someone came in person and looked me in the eyes and told me something very important. But I was getting ready to do something big, and so I just kind of wrote it off, and I didn't ignore them, but I couldn't process it. And so later that day, I made that phone call, picked up the phone and called them. And again, this was like I had never talked on the phone with that couple. I had never talked to this person on the phone. And we had a 30-minute phone call. And at the end of it, I understood what she was saying. at such a deep level. And I had made all kind of assumptions, and I had not really understood. But I heard her. So why is being heard so important? This is in our DNA. This is just what we need. We need to be heard. As kids, we needed to be heard, and as adults, we need to be heard. It validates us. Our perspectives are able to get out there and be heard. And it just validates. It's a sense of community. And I think that's why our groups here at this church are so successful and so good and keep people coming back week after week, is because we've created a soft, safe space for people to be heard. Amen. Yeah, and that's important. This is one of our spiritual, emotional, psychological needs, to be heard. And there's this pastor and author who's written a number of books on being heard. And he says that being heard and being loved feels so similarly that the average person cannot tell them apart. That's how important it is to be heard. And I know this from my job as being a project manager. And I'll tell you a story of how that really came home to me. Is I got transferred to Copenhagen, Denmark, of all places, to work as a project manager. And the project was located in Copenhagen, but it really involved 4 of the Nordic countries coming together as one project and getting rid of their old bespoke customized systems to go on to the big corporate system that we were using all over the globe. And we knew from day one this was going to be a challenge culturally, and just a challenge from an IT perspective as well. And here they had this American bossy woman coming over there to project manage it. And their work culture is incredibly different in all 4 of those countries than it is to the U.S. So we partnered with IBM on that project, and they had a pretty senior guy come onto the project full time. And part of his job was to coach me and mentor me so that I could deal with just these cultural differences. And I remember he looked at me one day and said, "Terri, we can change you to work really well with our culture, and we can get this project done. Or we can change the 150 direct reports of yours and the 250 stakeholders on this project to work with your culture." So I did the math, carry the one, Nope. I knew that I had to change, right? So I committed to it. So one day he comes to me and he says, "Listen, we have this thing that we do here in Copenhagen every Friday. We bring in Danish pastries, and we eat pastries and we drink coffee." I'm like, "We do that in the U.S. as well. We just do it with donuts and kolaches, but perfect. I'm all over this. I'll be the first one in line eating a cinnamon roll," right? So Friday comes and I bring some good cinnamon rolls, and everybody brings stuff, and I go get my cinnamon roll and my coffee. I go to my desk and start working and eating. And in a few minutes, I had my team lead meeting on Fridays about that time. So I go in the conference room and there's nobody there. And I waited a few minutes and there's nobody there. So I finally leave and go look for people. And the guy from IBM, Fleming was his name, he catches me and he says, "You didn't get the concept. This is not a grab and go kind of a thing. This is, we stand in the kitchen, all of us, for 30 minutes, maybe more, and we talk to each other, and we listen to each other, and we team build, and we get to know each other." And let me tell you what, when that project hit the skids in about 6 to 9 months, which they all do, I was so glad that we had taken that 30 minutes every single Friday to listen to each other, to feel heard, because that team of diverse cultures, they collaborated better than any other team I've ever been a part of, because they really trusted each other and they knew that they would be heard and that their issues would be taken care of. Now, I went to listen to some live music a couple of weekends ago over here at the Unitarian Church. Once a month, they have a thing where they have a musician come in, and I'll just do a little plug for them because they're skipping August, but I think September is Shake Russell, so get your tickets early, right? So I went and listened to the singer-songwriter out of the Austin area, and he said something really interesting. He said it's difficult for singer-songwriters like him to really feel heard these days. And he said, he was young, but he said, remember in the 70s and 80s when y'all would listen to music, you would put an album or a CD into a device, and you would listen to the entire thing all the way through. While you were reading all of the notes on the album cover and in the liner notes, and you read every lyric to every song. And he said musicians really felt heard. And he said these days, he's one song of 1,000 in your Spotify list. And he is struggling to feel heard. So we know it's important. So how can we improve? How can we do better? Well, let's see. We can listen without problem solving. We can stop commenting on every single thing that the other person says. We can learn to listen like Jesus listened. And sometimes we just need to be quiet. I'm waiting for another amen, but okay. So when Barry and I first got married, we were happy newlyweds, and we would come home from work every day and say, "How was your day?" And we would tell each other. Well, I was raised by two parents who absolutely loved their jobs. My dad came home every day and talked about his job like it was the best thing ever. My mother was mostly a stay-at-home mom, but she had two jobs when I was a child, off and on. And she lit up when she talked about her job. She absolutely loved it. She thrived. And so that's what I was raised with. That was my attitude about work. I loved my job. My husband was not raised that way. So I would come home and say, "How was your day?" And he would start complaining about a few little things that had happened at work. And I immediately went into problem-solving mode. Well, have you thought about this? Have you done this? I wonder what would happen if you did this. And my favorite, have you thought about it from this other person's perspective? And after a week or so of marriage, he said, "Terri, I don't want you to solve my problems. I don't need you to solve my problems. I just want you to listen. And after you've listened, you can pat my hand and say, 'Can I bring you a beer?'" Well, I couldn't wait to get to work the next day to tell my best friend Vicki this story, because I knew that she would just remind me of how amazing my problem-solving skills are. So we go to lunch, and I tell her the story. And she says, "I am so happy that he told you that, because you do the exact same thing to me." She says, "When I complain about being single, you list 15 guys that I could be going out with here at work that are single. And you list 10 organizations that I should join to meet men. I don't want to date those men. I just want you to listen, and then I want you to bring me a Diet Coke." So we can also listen like Jesus. So if you think about it, Jesus and his disciples were going from place to place to place. And everywhere Jesus went, he found people who were disenfranchised, people who were marginalized, and he spoke with them, he healed them, he talked to them. And there's lots of stories in the Bible about that. There's that little tax collector guy, Zacchaeus. He saw him up in a tree, and he befriended him and went to his home, and, he helped him heal. And there's this guy, Bartimaeus, who was a blind beggar in one of the little towns. And all of the townspeople, when Jesus was coming in, they shushed him. They told him, shush, we don't want to hear you begging. You need to be quiet because Jesus is coming. Jesus sought him out. He heard him, and he didn't respond with judgment or criticism. He responded with love. He listened to him, and he healed him. And that's what we can learn from Jesus, is to listen with love so that people really feel heard. Now, Jesus also visited these two sisters, Martha and Mary. So Jesus goes to their home. Now, Martha, I just imagine she's the older sister, the perfect one, Can you tell I'm an older sister? Okay. She is doing all the work. She is cooking for Jesus. She is making him food. She is serving him, and Mary, her sister, is only sitting at Jesus' feet listening. That's all she's doing. Well, finally, Martha just becomes fed up, and she says, Jesus, you need to tell Martha to help me because I'm doing all the work. Well, here's what Jesus said. Jesus says, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. That tells me that being present is more important than being busy. Wow. And that our presence in listening to someone with our whole heart is very valuable. And Martha was caught up in worry and in stress and in fear. And that is an obstacle for us feeling one with the divine. And spiritual listening is listening for that oneness, for that divine, listening for God's voice in ourselves and in others' voices and others' stories. And that's why we can learn to be like Jesus and listen intently and with love. So as you leave here today and go out into the world of cell phones and text messages and to-do lists and meetings on your calendar and all of the busyness and that TV show you're supposed to watch, The Bear, we can go knowing that it is such a gift to be able to listen to someone, to be able to make them feel heard. So I hope you leave here with an open heart, willing and able to make someone feel heard. Thank you.